after you've been a victim of a crime, it's quite a surprising thing. I mean, you don't expect people to do bad things to you for no reason. Yeah, in the first few months after the attack, I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, which manifests in the most fascinating ways that you would never really expect. Weird things like memory loss or becoming sort of incapable of dealing with very, very simple, mundane tasks. Simply things like sort of cooking or cleaning up or, looking at a dirty room that needs to be, the laundry needs to be done, and feeling overwhelmed by the sheer act of having to pick up your laundry, and finding that all quite sort of difficult, or becoming just so engrossed in other thought processes that stuff gets quite ignored. And then I think there were also times where I did find myself panicking in situations where I would not formally have panicked. I found busy spaces, people rushing down streets, crossing at traffic lights if it's lots of people around you, really quite strangely intimidating. Now, that was partly because I was wearing an eye patch and I had a different depth perception and felt very vulnerable out walking around the street. Getting on trains, I was living in a place where I had to catch a train every day. Trains were awful. The sounds, the level of noise, the number of people, the things that we'd naturally normally negotiate, the frustrations of living in a big city, became something that was really very, sort of, to a degree, overwhelming. I was assigned a counsellor through a victim service, and so through the process of what was very sort of cognitive counselling processes, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it was considered something that would be temporary and that we would work through and that I would overcome. I guess as I became more aware of what these symptoms were, I mean, I wasn't necessarily unable to sleep. I wasn't reliving the experience. I wasn't terrified of seeing the person again. I wasn't having those kind of flashbacks or great despair or anything like that, so I didn't feel like I could be suffering from a genuine disorder as a result of this attack. But it became clearer to me that there's really subtle and minute ways that these things can play out, and I was aware that my personality had changed somewhat. I think that I had become more, I guess, negative and somewhat despondent about just the state of things in general. I think, my friends are all very incredibly understanding and supportive, and we got through it, as we do through everything, with a great deal of humour. And we dressed me up as a pirate, and we kind of went with that, and we made jokes about the fact that the first time I got in an aeroplane, we didn't know whether my eyeball would pop out or whether the repair that they had done would fracture, and we had a lot of fun about it. But I think my capacity to really sort of have just plain old simple carefree fun that didn't somehow reference the experience I'd been through was diminished. I did feel sort of, yes, much less carefree, I suppose. I was not going to be someone who was depressed. It's just not in my nature. And I think I'm very lucky that it's not in my nature, but I have far too much that I want to do with my time and with my life to allow a negative situation in my life to stop me. Yes, that means that there was a process that I had to get through, but at the end of the day, it was self-determination or nothing. Nobody was really going to give me the perfect counsellor. Nobody was really going to give me the perfect piece of advice. I just had to snap out of it and deal with it, essentially. That's how I cope with things, and that's really what worked for me. And, there are still days where I will have a moment where I will think about it, and I will think, what's he doing now? Or, he still is somehow... And this is the weird thing, is that this person who you had nothing to do with and don't really want to have anything to do with suddenly becomes a part of your life. This criminal who did a criminal thing to you actually insinuates themselves into your world.